Welcome to a Shamanism pitch. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm doing this in the first place because, first of all, Sailing was the one winning, not Shamanism, and secondly, I didn't like Shamanism that much to begin with. So, why this video instead of, I don't know, maybe a Sailing skill pitch since that one is the one that won, right? Well, two reasons. First of all, Sailing is already in good way and good shape in my opinion. It's been around the idea at least for 8 years ever since it failed the poll. Plenty of people throughout the years have given types of content for the skills and ideas and whatnot, so I think that the community already knows what to do, so I feel comfortable just allowing people to sort of decide that. Maybe someday else I will be the one also making a video on it and what sailing should be and how you should train it and everything, but at this moment I don't think it's necessary, mainly because shamanism almost won. And shamanism is, in Jagex's words, they're going to put it, the pitch, in their back pockets. They're going to refine it, and then they're going to present it at a later date. Because shamanism lost by like 3%, I think. Right, and while when it comes to sailing and when it comes to taming, people have a lot of it's summoning and it's just engineering and it's a mini game and it's just sports and all of these things that people usually said that I didn't bother reading the blog posts because I guess that's too much work. With shamanism, I don't see the same approach. I don't see people talking about the problems that shamanism has. I don't see people talking about the problems that the pitch had. So in this video, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to pitch to you my version of shamanism. Because if this skill is someday going to come into the game, I want it to be good. I want to enjoy training it. I want to enjoy engaging with it, right? So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. Now, when it comes to the pitch itself, it was a bit all over the place. Okay, jagex sort of said that you make rituals and that you are able to get temporary boosts like incense sticks and totems, which are things from RuneScape 3, and that you're able to augment weapons and armors and things like that. And then they just, as an afterthought, they threw in the spirit world exploration thing, which just, again, more of an afterthought than an actual thing. So, with all of that being said, what are the problems that this pitch had, in my opinion? I think there's mainly three. Number one, the pitch was completely unfocused. It just felt like a bunch of ideas thrown together into a soup and, just blend together and served to you as a single skill pitch, right? Secondly, the way you train it. The way Jagex said that you would train it is you would have special nodes around Gillinor that you would gather materials from that would be used for rituals. This, to me, and having done the divination in RuneScape 3, is just divination with extra steps. It doesn't sound like a very fun way of engaging with a skill, and to me, it's just not a thing that we should strive for. And I'm going to explain why later. The third thing, and for the third time, augmentation. Permanent augmentation in old school, simply right now, at this date, I'm not a huge fan of it, right? I think that the game lacks the depthness currently to have permanent augmentation when it comes to your armor, when it comes to your tools and stuff like that. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 15 years, once we have, stuff like freeze penetration, poison penetration, and the combat is a bit more complex and skills have more depthness to that because you have other skills that also help those skills and whatnot. Maybe, sure, I will be down for it. Right now, as it stands, not something that I actually want. So those are the problems that I perceive with shamanism. Now, what I want to do here is actually give you my pitch of shamanism. And for that, first of all, I think that one of the main things should be the spirit world. I think that jagex lost a massive opportunity to actually bring that more to the forefront because, again, it felt like an afterthought when in reality, that is by far, to me, the most interesting part of the skill, right? Being able to explore an entire different area of Gillinor and even being able to bring some pieces of content that people actually are already asking and want into the game is a huge lost opportunity, right? So here's the thing. And to also talk about how you actually train the skill, because to me, having trained archaeology, and archaeology in RuneScape 3 is just you dig materials, you dig artifacts, and you repair the artifacts with the materials you dug. Super simple. The thing is, the way jagex did everything from the mysteries that you can solve to all of the lore and the pages and the stories, right? It's a far more interesting skill to engage with because you're not so much engaging with a skill as a skill, you're engaging with a skill as a piece of content in the game that happens to give you XP and unlock more stuff for you to do as you do it, right? And that is honestly how I think that skills should feel, right? Skills that make you feel like you unlock more stuff to do in the skill that, when you're engaging with it, right? So here's how I would actually do things, and there's how I would actually present the pitch, right? First of all, the main pitch and the main concept of the pitch would be spirit world. That is, again, by far the most interesting part of the skill, right? Being able to explore an entire different area, or like an area of the game that is the area that already exists but new, is pretty interesting, right? And to bring a concept that I've seen some people sort of already, talk about all they want, because some people at least, have asked for dungeoneering. So here's the thing. Let's make it so instead of you having random nodes around Gielinor, you actually have sort of doors for the spirit world. These doors, however, are for specific areas in the game, like imagine Varrock, that will have a randomly generated version of Varrock with, certain resources that you can only find in the spirit world from monsters or certain leaves, certain ores or whatever, right? That you would gather, sort of like you do in Dungeoneering, except this time you can actually bring your own gear into the thing, and at the same time you can actually grab the resources and get out with them. You actually get to keep the resources you scavenged, right? This way of scavenging resources to me sounds much more fun to engage with than to just simply AFK at a node that gives you untradeable items, right? This way, at least, you actually do have a reason to go in, to explore, to interact with the skill and gain XP from it, right? And then you would bring those items out, and you would need some stuff from Gielinor itself. Stuff that we can sort of create an item sink here. Stuff like weeds, berries, empty vials. Stuff that ultimately doesn't really have much of a use in the game. We can use that to combine that with the resources that you got from the spirit world to create these talismans that sort of work like runes that you can use to create rituals anywhere you want, right? Now, the thing is, while it is interesting, we could also make another part of dungeoneering into this as well. So, those resource dungeons that you find in dungeoneering that have extra resources? Well, here, instead of them having extra resources, you could make parts where instead of the spirit world being randomly generated, it would always be the same area. And these areas would work sort of like hubs, hubs where, for example, the Slayer Masters are, right? Hubs that have their own like little dungeons that you can explore with extra resources, that would have NPCs that you can bring the resources you scavenged from the spirit world to maybe refine them or trade them with for other resources that could act as a way of unlocking more powerful talismans to be able to do more powerful rituals. This way, the entire thing about going to get resources feels far more involved and far more rewarding because you also get to choose what to do with those resources, and you also get to actually, be in control of those resources. That's not just a resource that you're going to use for a ritual and that's it. It feels a resource that, is valuable because, hey, I can then trade it, or I can refine it, or I can do all of these things in the spirit world with them that will help me in my journey, right? And we can even use the spirit world to unlock specific rituals that you might not be able to unlock by levels alone, right? Through challenges or favors or quests or, well, just a bunch of things, right? Uh, and then we have obviously the rituals part, right? So one thing is, okay, you train the skill by going to the spirit world, getting all of these resources, crafting these talismans to be able to do rituals. But what are rituals? What are they used for? Well, rituals to me should be a AoE sort of activation area that you cast, right? And hear me out, because that way you would actually be able to balance stuff much more easily, especially when it comes to PvM. Because usually when it comes to PvM, one of the main problems is that a lot of bosses, and especially when it comes to old school, one of the main mechanics of bosses is that you need to move. You just need to dodge mechanics that the bosses throw at you in the arena. So this way, casting a sort of AoE ritual that would increase your accuracy or whatever would sort of be a double-edged sword, where you could risk it to stay in the ritual and or the ritual area to get the buff, but risk getting more easily damaged by the boss, or you just, well, leave the ritual, don't get the boost anymore, but at least now you're much safer than you were before. At the same time, the fact that the talismans exist sort of creates a trade-off where yes, you can create more powerful stuff, but that is at the cost of inventory slots. Right now, inventory slots are usually how you balance PVM stuff, right? Yeah, you can bring more high-end gear, but that is done at the cost of brews and restores and overall stuff that can ensure that, especially if your RNG isn't good, you get to survive, right? So ultimately, it's sort of a trade-off, sort of like the thralls, right? The thralls have their own book, so you have the trade-off of not having that good of an offhand and having to bring specific runes, but you get extra DPSs. So it becomes a game of, do you want to sacrifice your offhand and potential rune spaces in your rune pouch for certain spells for something that gives you more DPS, or is that not really worth it, right? And the same goes for skilling, right? Yes, you can craft certain talismans that give you skilling buffs, but ultimately, do you want to, right? Because you will need more inventory space for, or you will have inventory space that is wasted because of the talismans that you carry with you, which means that your trips will usually be, more brief, and you'll have to go to the bank more times. So if you're doing AFK skills, it might not always be worth it to use those things, right, and those boosts. Now, when it comes to these boosts, I think that they should always be temporary boosts. Obviously, none of them should ever be permanent or anything like that. As again, especially when it comes to augmenting stuff, a permanent boost, just bring fucking invention. If you're going to copy something, if it's something good, just copy it. Don't try and make skills that are really weird with that. But temporary boosts would work really well. Right now in old school, we don't really have much stuff surrounding temporary boosts, especially when it comes to outside of potions. Potions usually just increase your levels when it comes to the boosts that they do. Same thing with pies, but none of these boosts do other things like the Infernal Axe being able to burn logs and getting fire making XP. We don't have any of those types of boosts, which is a great opportunity here to create some of them, especially when it comes to skilling. Now, when it comes to the XP that you gain from the skill, the XP can be divided in multiple areas. So again, it feels far more compelling and far more rewarding to actually engage with the skill, as opposed to just training it to get it done with and get access to the rewards. The XP should come from exploring the spirit world and getting resources, from crafting the talismans, from getting the rituals done, and from using the rituals. The same way that when you burn a log from using a infernal axe, you get fire making XP. If you get a log when you have a ritual related to woodcutting active, you should also gain shamanism XP, right? This way you get rewarded not just by doing the rituals, but by actually engaging with them, right? Not just creating, but using them, being sure that you are taking advantage of them. The XP will be well distributed. It's not just a gathering skill, it's not just a buyable skill, it's a skill that just rewards you for engaging with it. And then when it comes to the future, when it comes to future expansion, right now it can be the type of thing of, hey, we're just doing this for specific skills or specific boosts in specific areas, but in the future you can unlock different spirit worlds types areas, right? In Especially now with sailing, you can unlock some at the sea with different boosts for other skills. You can even gain different abilities, like maybe in the future, again, augmentation if you're into that, even though, again, I don't think that right now. I would be really careful with how I implement that. But, like essentially, this way, the skill feels far more grounded. It feels far more understandable. It's about the spirit world specifically. It creates excitement over that. and the rituals that you do feel like an actual reward for completing them, as opposed to just having to grab some resources from some random wisp colonies that then will be able to gain XP with, right? It feels The XP feels far more distributed, it feels more rewarding to engage with, it opens the doors for the future, and it creates a different type of reward when it comes to the way you actually engage with a skill and the way you engage with temporary boosts and so forth. So when it comes to skill pitches and when it comes to shamanism, if jagex really wants to go forth with shamanism and really wants to bring shamanism out after sailing, this is the way I think they should do it. Focus on the spirit world, focus on the gathering of resources and using those resources, not on the rituals. Focus on the rituals being rewards, not the way you train the skill. And again, make the skill and the way you train it far more interesting and engaging, as opposed of just yet another woodcutting or mining skill with extra steps, right? So that's it. And yeah, maybe I'll do skill pitches for other skills in the future, maybe even sailing at a later date, but yeah.